Welcome to the third episode of the Hack on Hacks podcast. We're going to be going over episode 3, A Gig is a Gig, written and directed by Lucia Aniello. I've tried two different versions of the name. Please correct me if I'm wrong, anyone out there. This is written and directed by her, so very interesting. This is her episode, released May 20th, 2021. Here we go. Okay, so it starts off with classical music being played, and you see these fish just coming out of this like what looks like artificial system and into a pond. And it's live fish for ponds and lakes. The guy's just holding the device, shooting the fish in there, and you see Deborah just sitting there sipping her mug of coffee with a satisfied look on her face. And they don't show the sound, but she's going, and then they show another character we get to meet, Wilson, the water cop. I'm just going to say his name now because we're going to learn it. But he has his Las Vegas Water Patrol patch on, and he looks pissed. And it cuts to Deborah saying, get a warrant. And Deborah's over her monthly allowance, and she owes $150,000 in fines. But let me just pause to make a quick, analytical thing. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. But I think that the fish in the pond thing is a very symbolic thing. So we talked a bunch about how Deborah has business acumen and Deborah creates her own luck in Vegas, sort of thing. So by artificially placing the fish into the pond, she knows she has opportunities out there. She knows she'll be able to possibly catch a fish. And that's how she operates in her life with her comedy too. She creates the comedy opportunities for herself, and she always stays ready so she doesn't have to get ready. So I thought that was a pretty good metaphor there, and it's going to play later into the episode, the fish in the pond. Okay, but anyway, so it's just about back and forth between Deborah and Wilson, and he looks a little scared because Deborah's yelling at him, and then they start talking between Marcus and Wilson, start going back and forth. Can you please tell this water cop that I have more pressing issues to attend to, like taking an unnecessarily long shower? And she gives him a look like "fuck you," and then you see a little bit of a flirtatious thing between Wilson and Marcus. He's going to let him around the back, and so he can measure the water. So the next thing we see is Kayla and Jimmy in LA. He notices there's a hair in the coffee, and he goes, "What's in this coffee?" He didn't do the classic thing where you like spit it out when it's disgusting. He just did like the this is gross. And she said she put half and half and sugar in it. And Jimmy's, and she's like, "Oh, well, Splenda, a couple of Splendas." And Jimmy explains that's chemicals. He takes natural sugar, and Kayla, brain, FART. But the next thing is very funny because the phone is ringing, and Kayla should be at her desk waiting to receive all the phone calls and, patch them over, whatever the word is, send them over to Jimmy. But Kayla's just standing over him like, "Oh, looks like, is your phone ringing?" And Jimmy's very sarcastic. He's like, "I don't know. Let's find out." Like I shouldn't have to be answering my own phone, but he does it anyway because he's a real trooper. Jimmy Lusek Jr.'s office, Jimmy speaking, the way he does it is like, "I have to answer my own phone. This is kind of ridiculous." And it's Ava, and she's driving in her car, and she's like obviously trying to just have a non-business talk. So she asks about a dog that she sent him, and Jimmy's like, the dog. I have a dog, and the dog hates me, and what's going on with you? So she just says she's pretty lonely, and he said, how's it going with Deborah?" Um, and then we get into the archiving. So Ava still thinks you can sense it that Deborah's just some old hack, and she goes into this, so far what she's archived. What's the most interesting thing? She said what she's archived and discovered is that she co-hosted New Year's Rockin' Eve in 2000, and she said, of course, you sense a 9/11 joke. 2001 wasn't as good, but I don't know. Maybe that's just because I knew 9/11 was coming. And then Jimmy reminds her that, Deborah's done some pretty cool stuff because she's his client, so he knows what she's all about. And this is something that I missed the first time watching and on the rewatch. That's why I do this to hopefully help other people that, oh, that's a pretty big thing that plays into later seasons. She started the gay cruise trend. So that's something that I had to, even when rewatching this episode, I had to go back and be like, oh, wait, that is true. I completely missed that part. And, he says, I know you love LGBTQ AI plus stuff. Speaking of which, and then he transitions to the girlfriend, how's Ruby? And you get some more information about Ava and her relationship with Ruby. So apparently they broke up 3 months ago. That's why in episode one she was scrolling through those pictures, looking all sad and making the drink, and she ends up hooking up with her postmate, who's a guy. So also the bisexuality, that's she's the B on all the letters. So here we go. So he said he cuts her off. He says, if you're just trying to like hang out, like and shoot the shit, I God bless you, but I can't right now. So Jimmy's always trying to do the best for his clients. He's always trying to work. And it's hard, I guess, when you're an agent because you have to walk that line between, is this my buddy that I'm talking to, or is this someone that I need to get business for and work for? So they do a pretty good job of walking that line and showing that dynamic in this show. Okay, so Kayla comes back. Here you go, Prince. Yum, she says, and he takes a sip. He spits it right back out. He's like, not yum, weird and bizarre. What's in this one? And she goes, honey, you said natural. It comes from bears. Okay, Kayla. And here we go. Now we're going to get some more insight into what I was alluding to in the earlier episodes. So we don't know exactly what Kayla does. We just know that she's kind of a ditz and kind of not good at her job of being like the assistant in that position, in that capacity. But then we see who's coming in the door, and it's Michael. And to Kayla, that's Daddy. Daddy's at work. So it's his baby girl. So you can tell the big boss, she's the daughter of the big boss. And he said she's really special. But another thing, like I said, there was a budding relationship between the two, Kayla and Jimmy. She specifically requested to be at Jimmy's desk, which is something we didn't know before. And she did. So he could have had some Harvard bragging about his Fulbright. That's what Kayla says. And Jimmy's like, that would suck. Totally. Like, he's so good at that comedic acting, like ultimate sarcasm. God, that would have been so annoying. And they both just to that laugh, like, fuck my life. Hold down the fort, Jimmy Jr. Hold down the fort, Jimmy Jr. They both say. And then he's like, can you at least bring me back some lunch? They're already out the door on their way out, father daughter. So, tough break for Jimmy there. He's still trying to make it in this business. That's what they're trying to show there. He's like the odd man out. So then the next thing that happens is that Ava's on her way into Deborah's house and she sees a package and she's wearing her Bernie 2020 bag, another subtle political thing that they reference. But so she sees Kathy Vance is the one who sent this envelope. And we know from earlier episodes that from the pilot that Deborah does not talk to her sister Kathy because Kathy stole or decided to get with Deborah's husband. So that's kind of a sore spot in their relationship, I'd say. But we don't know the extent to that. But another good thing I want to point out is that Ava, coming back, a callback to the earlier bit about the shoes, shoe dependent. Ava realizes that she's wearing boots, so she actually is courteous and she takes off her boots. So there's a little bit of a development and a respect growing for Ava and Deborah's mansion. So the next thing we see is Deborah is talking to her house manager and she's going through old clothes, donate this, take that. Do you want this? And the house manager has a funny line. She's showing her a pair of bright red pants. And Deborah's like, do you want that? And she's like, I like a pant with a stirrup. All right. And Deborah's like, okay. And then this is a great little, like I said before, the ancillary characters bringing out the character traits of the main characters. This time it's like a combo. You get to learn more about Caitlin Olsen's character, and then you get to learn more about Deborah's character. I say Caitlin Olsen's character. Her name's DJ. So DJ and Deborah. Okay. So, like, I'll just reference what happened in the last episode. So, Kiki, if you guys remember, Kiki was the blackjack dealer in the private blackjack dealer in Deborah's house. And she had that line about the dress. You know, she repurposed the dress of Deborah's into her own. And she said, the point is, her shit is ugly, but the quality is there. So if you can't make it good, that is on you. So that's Kiki's perspective. And DJ's perspective is she's walking out in this long sleeve, kind of retro looking, goofy dress with, pattern design all over the side of like her oblique and over the shoulders and down her leg. And she says, I mean, come on. And then you see the house manager like, ooh, interesting. And then DJ's like, this sucks. And then Deborah's like, it's chic, it's very elegant. It's very Gina Lolo I can't even pronounce that name because I don't know who that person is because I don't know. I guess that's an age generational gap thing, which is the whole point of the show. So look at me. All right. She's like, I look like an asshole. Just give it to stupid Marcus or donate it. You think Kiki would do that? Absolutely not. They're trying to show you she's not like that. She's kind of like a spoiled brat. But like I said, characters can grow, characters can change, or can they? Some maybe do, some maybe kind of don't, but we'll see. So they go back and forth. Some things are too nice to donate, and of course DJ disagrees. She said, and then they get into like the serious stuff, like, okay, I'll take the heirlooms because it's a very transactional relationship they've set up so far, right? She was in the pilot, I believe. She was, she had her Monster Energy drink, and she was, she was stealing her stuff possibly, and she had to check her bag, and Deborah wanted to look through it, and then she went like this, like, give me a kiss. There's a very strange relationship of like affection or not affection. Do they love each other? Do they not? Is it transactional? Is it a combination? I guess we'll see as the show goes on. But she says, I'll take the dress if you promise to wear one of my chokers on stage, and a big one. So Deborah's big thing is deflecting. So she instantly goes to assault her, not assault, she goes to insult her. She's like, the dress is working. You know what's not working? Your eyebrows. And so she does a personal insult. I keep telling you. And then she's like, well, I've been using this serum. So Deborah does care, but she cares in her own way. She cares in kind of a superficial way because they can't get to that deeper emotional level at this point. This is the first season, so I'll just say that. It just takes time, like she just said. And she tries to get Josefina, the house manager, involved, but then they throw in the serious stuff. Like what I love about the show is they go from serious to like, okay, it's about to become like a drama that's not getting to the funny, and then they do a funny part right after that. So she says, you're going to regret that you. Um, I'll just get the exact quote. Here we go. She said, just a little pencil, with the eyebrows. And she said, I've been using the serum. It just takes time. And then she asked Josefina, can you please, like, get in the middle of this? And she's like, you're going to regret not wearing that blazer. Well, let's do a little better here. Okay, here we go. Josefina, can you? I'm just here for the blazer. You were gonna regret over tweezing in the '90s. That's what it was. And she says, the only thing I regret from the '90s is not getting fucking frickin' emancipated. So that's pretty serious. But then Deborah says, DJ, I've had a morning with the water cop, so do not start with me. It's obviously that doesn't mean anything to Deborah. We've seen how tough she is. So it's the classic, like, you know, mother, daughter, parent, child BS. And Ava's in the middle with her mouth open, just staring through the mirror, thinking she's hiding. But Deborah's too observant. So they're arguing about the pond, and Deborah's like, "What are you doing?" And she's talking to Ava. Ava doesn't realize it. She's like, "Me? Yes, I can see you in the mirror." And she's like, "Oh, special delivery. This came for you." She knows. She used that line on her in the first season about no wonder your own sister left you for your husband, or some line like that. So she knows better than to do this, but she still said, you know, she said to herself, I'm gonna bring it up here because she probably doesn't really still like her at this point. Excuse me. This is I think it's from your sister, she says. And DJ's like, oh shit. And then you see it's one of those moments where the real Deborah shows up, and Jean Smart is so good at this. She can show you which part is like Deborah the performer comedian, and which part is Deborah the person we haven't met yet. So this one is Deborah the person we haven't met yet. She just has that serious face on. She doesn't have a wig on. She has her hair normal. She says, "Throw it out and don't come back up here again." So Ava was just very like that was a silly mistake by her, but she's a young, impressionable, up and coming comedian. Who knows why she did that? I guess we'll find out later, maybe. But it was a serious moment, so you have to have a break. You have to break the tension. So DJ walks up and she says, "If it'll make you feel any better, I'd be happy to." And she has her hand on her shoulder. "I'd be happy to take your diamond tennis bracelet." And she has that smirk, like, and then Deborah, of course, has to one up it. She's like, "I told you, you'll get that when I'm dead." So then Ava's winding down the staircase, and Wilson and Marcus are finishing up their conversation. A little flirty, flirty. Have a good day. You too. And of course, Ava has to get in on that. She's like, "Who was that?" I can be like that. I can be very nosy. And she's like, "Who was that?" He's like, "It's just Wilson. He's such a pain in our ass." She goes, "Our ass? You and Deborah share an ass?" And, you know, he's mad. "Is there something I can help you with?" And she reveals that she brought the envelope upstairs. And Marcus is like, "What? You brought this to her?" And you realize that she's never sent anything before, Kathy, Deborah's sister. So Marcus, of course, goes back to the point of what I just said a second ago, that, you know, it's a sore spot because Kathy left, Deborah, Kathy left, no, Kathy didn't leave anyone. Deborah's husband left her for Deborah's sister, Kathy. There it is. You can tell I'm a professional, right? This is my third time doing this. The first two were better, but what are you going to do? All right. And Ava is trying to like rationalize and reason and understand why. And Marcus just doesn't even look at it, he just throws it out. So Ava's like, there could be a gift card in there. But then we just get back to work. They both do that, Marcus and Deborah. And he's like, I believe you have some archiving to do. And I'd like it done soon. We're putting together a DVD, a best of Deborah DVD for the anniversary show. And she's like, yeah, I'll get right on that. A lot of money in DVDs right now. But another theme of the show is like she's on QVC, she does the cruises. She can make money without being like thinking the way that younger people think to make money. Like I'm staring into a small camera right now doing a podcast. And that's how some people think that they can do it. But people like Deborah do it the old fashioned way, and if it works for them, it works for them, and they make a lot of money. And they don't have to like think about it the same way and try to innovate in all these new ways. They just do it their way and they just keep going. So she goes back and forth with Marcus, and Marcus is like, "Well, we have a gig later. You'll get to display your genius there." So then it's the whole "we're not sure if we like each other yet" phase of the show is happening. And she's like, "Great, I'll be by the water heater if you need me." So she goes back into the room, and you see the Deborah Vance video collection in a big blown up poster, which I didn't notice the first time. Deborah Vance Money Baby, a movie that she made. But this is the part where you start to learn about Deborah the comedian. Like in the first episode, it was through the pictures. You saw her on the Jay Leno couch. You saw her at the congressional hearing. You saw all the different. You saw her on stage at what looked like a big concert. So those were through the pictures. But now we get to see it through the videos. So comic relief is the first thing you see. She's telling a joke. Um, In America, if I want to drive on the wrong side of the road, I got to get in the car with Billy Joel. So I don't know how young or old my audience is going to be, but Billy Joel got into a very famous accident. So that's where they pulled that from. It gives you an idea of the time frame that she told the joke, and it gives you an idea of her style of comedy back when she was really on the road doing comedy. And she was more than just some Vegas residency old hack, according to Ava. Arsenio Hall in 1990. She has a whole bit about cooking collard greens. I don't love cooking. I don't love cooking, but I do hate it. Last night I tried to make collard greens. This morning I woke up to a cease and desist from the NAACP. And, Arsenio loves it. Damn, huh? And then of course the eye roll from Ava, like, oh, this is hack stuff. So and then it goes into the fire stuff. She's making jokes about that. She does an advertisement for a thing called Duraflame, and the tagline is "Starts faster, burns longer." Take it from me, someone who really knows how to set the night on fire. So that's another theme of this episode and of the show is that is Deborah really okay to joke about this sort of stuff, or does it deep down really hurt her, and has it hurt her for years, but she's just had to put up with it because she's a woman in the comedy industry and she's just trying to make it, and she has to get it by any means she can, and she can't really fight back for her real self. She has to remain the funny person, the funny girl. So, Ava keeps going through, and she makes a joke about Patrick Swayze. They just it's an eye roll from Ava the whole entire thing. That's the whole point of this montage. And then she gets bored, so she starts going through her Instagram of Ruby, her ex, and she sees a cute little video, a cute little what's the thing my generation loves to do? The boomerang. It's like she's doing some cute little face. I don't know if what I did was, but tried my best. And so Ava's bored. She's going through her phone, and Ruby sent her. Well, actually, Ruby didn't send her anything. In response to what Ruby put online on Instagram, Ava decided to send the eggplant emoji, and then Ruby sent the little kissy face kitten emoji. So Ava was like, "Oh boy, we could have something here. I could be back in the game." So she decides to just go with the full nuclear option. I miss you. I don't know if that's the nuclear option, but you know what I mean. She wants to, you know, do the most extreme version of trying to get her back as quick as possible. She goes, "I miss you," and then they show the the typing dots, and then Ava, anxiously awaiting, and it says, "Miss you too." And then they start getting like little upbeaty music. What's going to happen next? Ava starts unbuttoning her shirt. She's wearing like a flannel shirt. She starts unbuttoning it, and she hikes up one off her shoulder a little bit, and she's trying to find the lighting, and she ends up doing like a selfie like that, and it's a sexy selfie. She's has this like look of desire on her face, and you can hear the camera clicking, and then you see Deborah come into the picture, and she's literally clutching her pearls, like she's wearing a necklace and it looks like pearls, and she's clutching it. She's in her wig and she's in her outfit. She's like, and Ava's like, "Oh fuck, no!" And she falls, and she just has this face like a kid, like I've been caught. And then Deborah just turns and casually walks away. And now we get to another major theme of the show. So Ava is going to try to explain herself. So she says, "Oh, I think what we have here is a pretty classic generational misunderstanding, you know?" And Deborah's like, "Oh, okay," like that's her eye roll. You know, Ava thinks that she's an old hack with her old material and corny jokes, and Deborah thinks she's just some entitled young Gen Z person that thinks that the world owes her everything, and that she's hilarious without a full on resume like Deborah's. But Ava makes the point. It's very normal for people my age to send nudes. It's about having agency over our sexuality. And then Deborah makes like the most practical point of all. She's like, "I'm not judging you. I just don't think you need to send a boy a nude just because he asked you to. And she's like, for your information, it was a girl, and she didn't ask me to. And then she's like, oh no, that's the like, you didn't even, you weren't even asked to do this. You just decided to do it. And that was pretty reckless. That's like what's in on Deborah's face. And back to business. She's the employer, and Ava's the employee. So she's like, just do it when you're off the clock. And then it gets into like, of course, another political point. What would you do that if you worked in a bank? And then Ava's like, depends. Am I the president of this bank? Because if so, then I'm probably a white collar criminal. I'm doing way worse than sending nudes. So, she's got the Bernie 2020 bag on. She's possibly anti, I don't know what she's anti, but she definitely said we need a wealth tax. And you get a little bit of a glimpse into her politics. But one thing I love, the writers on the show, they don't make it about the politics. They don't make it about, oh, white collar crime and taking on the big banks. They just mention it in passing, and that's a nice little joke because the next thing that Deborah says, because she said to Ava, if you worked at a bank, and then Ava said something about being the CEO, and Deborah goes, "You read more like a junior teller," and Ava likes that a little joke, and she's like, "Just not on my time or in my chair." So then we get to the next thing, the next major theme. A gig is a gig. That's the name of the episode. So they're about to walk into this place. They're about to see what the gig is. And it's a place called Pyre Pizza. Okay? Pyre Pizza. So, of course, I don't think anything's done by accident. So I'd say the reason that they chose a place named Pyre Pizza is because the word pyre, if you look it up, it's a large built-up heap of combustible. Let me just start over. Ah, a large built-up heap of combustible material. Hmm. She was doing the commercial for Duraflame. The whole thing is about her, whether she, the whole rumor or what is a fact right now. Oh, I'm not trying to spoil anything, but we don't know for sure what happened. But allegedly, supposedly, what happened is she burned her husband's house down. And a pyre, large built up heap of combustible material. There's also going to be maybe a little blow up in this upcoming scene. So I'm not spoiling the whole show, but I'm trying to show you how the writers put this all together and put this stuff in your head without you even realizing it. If you, in the back of your mind, know the definition of pyre, it's wood fire pizza. It's a pretty standard thing, but to use the word pyre, I think is great. And there's also more like specific, definitions that make more sense. But of course, when I look up the word, it gives me the AI version. But we're gonna talk about that later on in the show, big time. Talk about a spoiler, huh? Okay, this is the traditional definition that I think matches: a pile of material to be burned. So, what's she about to do? She's about to burn material, and it's not going to be amazing material. It's going to be Ava's job is to punch up and give her bits. Remember from earlier in the pilot episode? So Ava's like, a pizza place. What am I gonna do? What am I supposed to be doing here for you? And she said it's a grand opening, so there's press. So pitch me some one-liners and some bits. And she's like about pizzas and calzones. And then we meet Damien. I don't think they say his name yet, but Damien says they don't have calzones. So what does that tell you? Marcus is the COO. Damien Damien is involved in the business, and anyone that works for Deborah has to be extremely detail oriented. So he must have looked at the offerings at this Pyre Pizza place and knows that they don't have calzones. That's just a nice little touch on the writing. And then she says the line of the episode: "A gig's a gig, honey." And then we meet the little Debbies again. They were outside in the first episode after she finished her show in Vegas in the pilot episode. This time she gets to interact with them some more. So she says, "Hello, my little Debbies." And I love this part. She's like, so you see this big guy, bald head, and he goes, "Hey, bitch." You know where to sign me. In a playful voice, not like, hey, bitch. No, it's like, hey, bitch, you know where to sign me. Like, we beat this thing together. And she's like, oh, hey, how are you? Oh, honey, I'm so glad you're better. Like, this show just has such a great combination of all the emotions you want in a comedy. It has heart, it has humor, it has seriousness, it has those moments where they break the tension. It's just so perfect. But anyway, so Ava's like, I can't believe she's doing this. Is it seriously worth it? And he's like, Marcus goes, it's worth about 100 grand in some stock. So when I first watched the show, I'm like, wow, she kind of like, is she a hack? How are they going to redeem this? Or going to a pizza shop and, telling jokes about pizza or whatever. But it's worth 100 grand in some stock. Her business acumen is A1. 100 grand in some stock. And she's like, that's like my mortgage for like 2 years. Or is it four? So what does that tell you? That tells you her business acumen is not so great. She's kind of more the traditional comedian where they're amazing at the one thing, but all the other things kind of fall by the wayside, if that's the right phrase. And Margaret's is so surprised. He's like, you're a homeowner? And she's like, I own a townhouse in LA, an amazing city I no longer live in. So, like I said in the first episode, LA is a character, Las Vegas is a character. She wants to be back in LA, that's for sure. And she's so disinterested in anything Vegas has to offer, particularly Deborah and working for her. So he asks if she's renting it, and she's like, no, because I don't know when I'm going to be back. And so he sighs. He's like, all right, put your address into Zillow. This is my curse. I just can't sit and watch someone miss an opportunity like this. Just glad my grandfather isn't around to see me get help some white girl make passive income. I thought that was a great line. And her face is like, oh, fuck you. And he's like, oh, you paid too much. And she knows. He's like, okay, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you rent this. And she's so surprised, like, really? What a good thing you're doing. And she's like, that's actually really nice. He's like, oh, I will be taking a monthly fee. So, of course, a major theme in the show, business is business. The business comes first. You can like someone and help them, but if you're not making money on that, you're a fool. That's the initial thought. And then Ava goes right into the trying to look at the phone because of the nude, and then she asks Damien. He's like, "Oh, I don't have unlimited data." So Ava's kind of SOL, and Deborah's cutting the big ribbon. All right, little Debbie's pizza's on me, and they all go running in. And Ava's trying to desperately get online, so she asks the guy working, "Is there internet?" And there is internet next door at the gun universe. So it's another political comment coming up. So guess what the password is for the gun universe? Lock her up. For those who aren't super into politics, that was the big line about Hillary Clinton back when it was a presidential race between her and someone else. And that was like a battle cry for people. People still love saying stuff like that. Lock her up, lock him up. And so Deborah's getting all tied up in her, putting her apron on. And Ava's idea for her is to do something from the perspective of she's giving this example of what she once did. She once did a instead of a corny joke route, she's trying to give Deborah some elevated, creative way to be funny at this place. She's like, I once did a 25 thread tweet from through the perspective of my Lexapro, and she's like, it did really well. So why don't we just do something from the perspective of the pizza ingredients? Like what if the cheese and the pepperoni have history, have history? And Deborah's face is like, this bitch. She's like, what? And then Ava's like, okay, we're not doing um, we're doing superficial comedy here. So she's like, oh, I don't know, just toss the dough in the air and try to get it to land on your head. And then Deborah's like, perfect, great. And Ava's like, all right, I guess we're still doing the corny shit. And then, of course, Deborah does a corny joke. Oh, she's holding the dough in her hands. Oh, you think these are big now? Wait till they rise. She goes like that. Okay, so Deborah finally gets a phone and she's looking at the thing, and the photo has not been responded to, but it's been seen. So that's like the worst thing that could possibly happen. And she's trying to get the place. Marcus is trying to help her get her place sold in the meantime. So he needs a key. So she finds a way to get Marcus's phone, just make a quick call, you know. So instead of caring about the business, she cares more about making sure, just like calling her a bunch of times and, you know, leaving her an awkward message. Hey, it's Ava. So first of all, just go ahead and disregard the picture I sent you. So just don't even, yeah, don't even like it didn't even happen. You know, and then she goes into like she's calling because of the key, and then she realizes that she's calling from Marcus's phone, so that's the reason she's not even gonna answer it. And when she's in the middle of explaining that, Marcus gets a call from Wilson Watercop. Am I doing this right? There you go. If that's any sort of a hint. And then Ava decides, all right, you know what? I'm just going to text you. It's a weird number. I'm going to hang up and let you know that it's me. So she texts, and then she's very surprised. She gets a phone call right back, but it's this woman named Fabriziana, and she's like, "Who is this?" And she's like, "Oh God, it's Fabriziana." And she's like, "I'm only picking up because you just ruined a take." Again, business is yeah, cutthroat and ruthless. Business in Hollywood they're trying to portray is very it's not as glamorous and um let's all hold hands and sing kumbaya as everyone imagines it to be. So she ruined a take. That's why she called. Basically, she's telling her to stop calling. And Ava's, very like that. And and then Fabriziana, she goes, "Is it true you're working for Deborah Vance?" And then, you know, Ava has a chance to be like, she's a great, I'm getting to know her. She's great. I'm actually very excited. She just completely lies and she says, I'm using it as research for something that I'm working on, a project. And Fabriziana goes, so you're writing for her QVC show? And it's a very like, negative tone. And she's kind of like calling her out for herself, writing for her, like writing for a hack and working with a hack. And Ava finally says, no, she's actually a very successful comedian with a historic residency. And you think that it's like, of course, the show is so good at doing that. You think it's going to go into some touching moment, and Ava's going to finally explain how she really feels about Deborah. But then Marcus pokes his head out and goes, Ava, she needs jokes on side salads. And he said it loud enough so that Fabriziana on the phone can hear. And she's like, wow, so we're going to get rolling again. And Ava's like, yeah, us too. I'll talk to you later. So that was an embarrassing moment where it's like, maybe I am working for a hack. But this is one of the best scenes. The client's very happy in the pizza place. Ava casually tells Marcus that he missed a call from Wilson, the water cop, and the client makes a suggestion. He says, "Hey Deb, what if we can get a photo with you like with the pizza on fire, you know?" And she pretends to laugh, like spit like do a spit take with what she's drinking. She's like, "That's hilarious." And this is where the magic of the show happens. And Ava's like, don't do that. And then, she's like, Deborah's like, excuse me? And she's like, it's degrading. Degrading for who? Deborah says. And Ava's like, you? And she's like, oh, you're telling me what's degrading. And a younger person would know not to throw this in someone's face, but she's an OG and she's a vet. She doesn't give a fuck. So she's like, you're telling me what's degrading? And then Ava just beats her to it. She's like, I knew you were judging me for that nude. And then the client's like, oh, okay, a nude. Oh, boy. And Deborah's like, no, no, I think it's funny. And then Ava, this is a theme that they do this to each other. They just drop the truth bombs on each other. She's like, if you thought it was funny, You would have opened that envelope. You would have opened that package this morning, and then you see Deborah's face like that. The real person comes through, and she's looking at her like, "You just hurt me more than I could possibly imagine." And then Gene Smart does this little thing that, like, it's like a signal in acting. I've never acted in my life, but this is how I'm interpreting it. She goes like this. She like, this is Deborah, the person that was hurt, and then she goes, and then she snaps back into, you know, Deborah Vance, the comedian, and she's like, "This is what I do. If you have a problem with it, you can just fuck off." And then she scares, like a jump scare, to Ava when she yells for the makeup artist Simone, and she herself, Deborah, she's like, "Let's do some soot, tease the hair up a little bit," and she degrades herself literally, like she has the makeup to her liking, to her degradation. And then Deborah's face is looking at, off to the side at Ava, like, I can't believe you just did this to me. And then the way that it's directed is so perfect. Is like, the face that Deborah's making is like that smile where it's like a I'm smiling, but if you let the camera go a little bit longer, you would see that lone tear come down. And she just looks like completely defeated. And the song tells the story again. It's all about, I don't understand the game of who I'm meant to be. um, you know and then you see Deborah walking out, and the way it's shot, she's kind of going like this, but you don't know if she's wiping the soot off her face or if she's wiping a tear off her face. It's left up to the interpretation of the audience, and I think she was wiping a tear off her face. And the lyric, "It's driving me insane," so like both of them are trying to figure out what their relationship's going to be and how they're going to help each other or hurt each other. So Ava's like, "Is she going to kill me?" And unfortunately for Ava, Marcus tells her that Deborah's afternoon just opened up, and she does not like idle time. So that was the theme. She's always working, working, working. So because she's working so much, sometimes people work so much just because they want to avoid the personal life. They just want to work, work, and work, and work, and work, and they never have to think about the personal life. I know a lot of people like that. I'm glad I'm not one of them, but I can definitely empathize with that. So you also find out she does charitable work with St. Jude's, and that's who canceled. And the whole thing is kind of like a ticking time bomb of like this idle time. So she has the afternoon off, and they're in the car together, and they're on their way to, we don't know where they're on their way. They're probably on their way back home. And Ava starts to try to give a genuine apology. She's like, "I'm sorry for what I said, but I was just in a really, she was probably going to say, I was just in a really bad place, and I just broke up with my girlfriend 3 months ago." And then it's another thing that happens, that they don't get to the actual seriousness between the two of them. And Deborah's like, "Pull over." And then she's like, "Come on." So she obviously wants Ava there. So she doesn't hate her. She's just trying to work through whatever's going on with what Ava just did. So the way Deborah does it is through comedy. So in this scene, she's getting onto the hop off touristy Vegas bus. So the tourist is giving her little spiel, um, and she sees Deborah, and Deborah's like looking up at her like, "I'm here." So you can tell she's done this before. You can tell this is one of her coping mechanisms. And she gets a lovely introduction from the woman. She's like, "It doesn't always happen, but when it does, it's always a treat." And she's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, the queen of Las Vegas herself." And she introduces Deborah. So Deborah looks all like, "Ooh, I'm about to do my thing." The queen of Sin City herself, I should say. Miss Deborah Vance, y'all. And she shows up, and she's like ready to perform. And Ava takes a seat. So she starts doing her bits. And we learn that she's been in Vegas for 30 years. And she's not doing material. She's just riffing. She's like, I have a story for every corner you can see. I mean, that telephone pole, my daughter once wrapped her car around that pole. I had to pay to replace it. Of course, I'm not the first person to pay for stiff wood in this town. And Ava's like that, the kid that's like, when you're mad at someone, but they make you laugh and you do that, like you can't help but smile. So, of course, like I always said, the theme is comedy, the theme is jokes, and how jokes can make such a big difference. So she just keeps riffing, and she starts doing crowd work. What do you do? I'm a doctor. Some of my most intimate relationships have been with doctors at my physical. Everyone loves it. So if you have the right health insurance, there's no need to date. Ava's like, that's cringe. Like she's making that face. And hey, you, the sad little girl with the big hands. So they do the call back to the big hands thing, like that bit that I mentioned in the previous episodes. So she rushes over with the microphone, the host, and she's like, "Oh, I'm from Los Angeles," and she's like, "Oh, Hollywood." You know what they say? Everyone hates. They're so vapid and obsessed with image. Well, clearly not. And she starts roasting her about her hair. And he was like, "Okay, all right." She's like, I kid. I actually know this young lady. She is a new employee of mine." And everyone starts clapping. And she's like, "But she did tell me that a joke I do is degrading to me." So, like I said, she's going to try to deal with it through her stand up. And she said, and I thought, well, that's rich because this morning I found her taking a nude selfie. So Ava's face is like, this bitch did not just do that. And like I said earlier, I would never do that to someone if they, because it's a very sensitive thing, but she's, like I said, she's an OG and she's going to throw back whatever she can at this person just to win. And Ava starts to go like this in her chair. And she's like, I haven't seen breasts that sad. And I have to go back and play and say the actual thing because it's so funny. It's such a great joke. Some moments in the show just make you like laugh out loud for so long. It's so perfect. Okay, so here, this is what she says. She talks about the nude selfie, and then Ava squirms and lowers in a chair. I haven't seen breasts that pale and sad since I toured the Tyson Chicken Factory. That gets the biggest laugh. And Ava's like, she never toured the Tyson Chicken Factory. And it just talks about how Ava, she gets more personal about Ava and how she wanted to see the answer from the phone and she never got an answer. And she's like, that would be like going up to Harvey Weinstein's hotel suite and him saying, you know what? Let's just find a conference room. And that's the big closer. And then Ava goes back to the unaliving herself joke from the very beginning, and then how we first met her. She's like, do you think if I jumped, I'd die or just break my legs? And the woman shushes her next to her. And then Deborah tells her final joke, and then pan out to the character Vegas and back into Deborah's house. And she greets the dogs, and it's like back to business. So Ava's very hurt. Excuse me. And she's like, thanks for the key to Marcus. Well, Marcus says to her, thanks for the key to your apartment. It was under your mat. And he basically has it ready to rent by next week. And she just looks down at her phone and she's like, oh, okay. And that is Ava looking at her phone desperately to see if Ruby responded or if Ruby responded on Instagram. But Marcus takes that as she's being disrespectful and she has no class. So Marcus is like, thank you, Marcus. You look so good today, Marcus. That girl, no class. But that's not what it is. And that's why the next scene is Ava trying to get her own private space in Deborah's massive backyard. And she calls Ruby and Ruby answers. So she's like, did you get the key? Yeah, I got it. And they get back, and then they get into like the nitty gritty of their relationship. I thought you missed me. She's like, as a friend. And Ava does the classic relationship thing. Well, the other person didn't make you happy. I can make you happy, sort of thing. I was just reading between the lines. And Ruby's like, Ava, dude, I'm having deja vu. And then she starts going into speaking Spanish like really fast. And this is one of my favorite lines in the whole episode. And Ava's like, I hate when you yell at me in Spanish. I'm not that far in Duolingo. And she, the whole reason that she was yelling at her in Spanish is because Ava thinks that she knows people better than they know themselves. And I am very guilty of that. That's like my main flaw, I'd say. I think that I know people better than they know themselves, and I've that's been a mistake I've made in the past. And it was like, "You're right. I'm sorry. I just missed you," sort of thing. And she's having a hard time, and you can tell they have this special connection. They have this relationship, and they're still friends. They actually remain friends, and they actually still possibly love each other. And she starts venting about Deborah. She kicks people when they're down, including herself. And Ruby's like, "That must be hard on you." And then she goes into the personal again. She's like, "How's your dad doing?" And Ava's like, "He's alive." Okay, back to what's actually important. So I'm hearing that you didn't like the nude self. You didn't like the nude. She says no comment. And it's just like that's another theme of this episode is that they get up to the cusp of the seriousness, and then it goes away. And then now they're talking about her putting sunscreen on her face and wearing sunscreen because Ruby's concerned for her. But he was like, then I'd have to wash my face, and like it gets into the intricacies of the nuances of their relationship. And Ava's like thinking, oh, maybe I could get back with her. And then the sprinklers come on, and she's like, oh God. So she comes back in, and she's all wet, and she had a terrible day. And then Deborah walks by with a martini in her hand. She goes, and the way she says it, delivers it, shoes off. Like, you're still in my house. You still have to be a professional. You had a little sprinkler in your hair. It's not the end of the world. And so the next thing she's doing is she's taking the paper towels and trying to get her hair dry. And she opens to throw out the paper towel, and she sees the fragile package. And then it cuts to back to business as usual. It's like the major theme, you know, 50K for an ADT, the security company, for her to host like a retreat or something. And Marcus is like, I think it should be 75, but I can get him there. And then he looks at her like, come on, Deborah, do this. And she's like, book it. He's like, love. And basically, he's like, what would I do without you? You know, she's, he, he goes, I think you'd be fine. Deborah's like, what would I do without you? And Marcus knows that that's just some BS. And he goes, I think you'd be fine. And she's like, like they like to play these little games, but they both deep down know what the deal is. And then she says she doesn't want to have to deal with Wilson, aka the water Nazi, again. And then we get another split second of the camera. Like, I love when directors do this. Another split second after Marcus says, sure, they focus on him just so they can show him being like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to see Wilson anymore. And then it cuts to Ava opening up the package, which she's definitely not supposed to do. And what you realize is Kathy left a note saying, Deborah, I believe these belong to you. Please call me back. And it's Deborah Vance. It's just newspaper clippings. Deborah Vance's big break. Deborah Vance is one of a kind. And Ava's going to learn about the real Deborah. TV's It Girl on the cover of Time magazine. Will Deborah Vance make history? History about what? I don't know. It's from a September 1976 issue, if I'm looking at it right. And the article says, within Time says, here comes Deborah. And we don't know what for yet, but Ava looks really intrigued, like her mouth's open, like she actually is a great comedian and a legend, not just like a Vegas legend. September 5th, 1976. So she sees the date and she starts aggressively going through the archives. She's going box by box, trying to find something, trying to find the right video, trying to find the right date. And eventually she finds something and she opens it up and she takes it out and she's like, got it. She's pops it in the VCR and she starts watching. And this was one of the biggest things in the whole show is right here. CBS Deborah Vance late night pilot unaired from November 1976. So it's Welcome to Late Night with Deborah Vance. Please welcome the one and only Deborah Vance. And I love when they do like that show, The Irishman, did a really poor um that show. The movie on Netflix, The Irishman, was like Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro in their 80s trying to like beat the shit out of someone and do a CGI to make it look like they're in their 50s. That did not work. What they do with the I guess it's I don't know. But however they whatever technology they used to make Gene Smart look like the 30s and 40s version of Gene Smart is incredible. And it's Ava watching on the TV, on the little TV in the archive basement, Deborah's first late night show, first and only. Now do not adjust your TV set, she says. This is late night, and yes, I am a woman. Everyone laughs, you know. I know it's very confusing. My accountant didn't even know what to put on my tax returns, so he just wrote mouthy broad. And Ava does one of those genuine laughs. You know, she's starting to reel her in. Going back to the fish thing earlier, she's starting to reel her in. And Ava technically is one of those fish that was just thrust into the pond, I guess, now that I'm thinking about it, hopefully. Lucia, tell me if I'm right, please, because that would be amazing. That would make me feel really good. But so she said, Deborah continues with the jokes. My very first order of business was to make sure the workplace was safe for all the ladies, right? And this is a 70s show. This is 1976. So on day one, I gave every man a pair of mittens and every woman a gun. Ava starts laughing even harder. And that was just the start. Next, I instituted a breastfeeding room. The only problem was those executives were really hungry. And then you see Deborah in her fishing outfit looking at Ava in the same position, the same shot from when Ava took the selfie, but Ava doesn't know that Deborah's there. So Ava just is cracking up. She's like laughing so hard, and Deborah's looking at her like with that hopeful smirk of like this could, this could work. And I got to go back to this joke because it's so good. Okay, so she's like, but I actually do think about the show the way I think about my baby. I conceive both with Merv Griffin. There was a Merv Griffin show. I know that from Seinfeld, but I don't know the extent of it. But I guess it was canceled because she says, knowing Merv, he's going to want to cancel it in the first trimester. And Ava keeps laughing. And she's like, oh, and Deborah, go back to Deborah, oh, get over it, talking to the crowd. Because she's like the anti woke comedian, if you would. And she's like, abortion is legal now, thanks to Roe v. Wade. Back when I was a sophomore, all we had was, no, back when I was in college, all right, I'm not going to mess up a joke. I mean, I said in the beginning, I am a hack. I mean, I'm doing this podcast. I'm a freaking hack. But guess what? I'm gonna get it right. Here we go. Ready? The first trimester was the last joke. That was the Merv Griffin reference. Here we go. Oh, get over it. Abortion is legal now thanks to Roe v. Wade. And that's the second that Deborah walks up the stairs again because she sensed Ava was about to turn and see her. And she's like, abortion is legal now thanks to Roe v. Wade. And thank God, because back in Berkeley, all we had was sophomore v. staircase. And that's the biggest laugh that she gets from Ava. And then it plays that soft music, that piano, that boom, boom, boom. And it's just that it gives you all the feels and you just realize what's going on and what's building. And in that moment, Deborah catches a fish. And it's the closing segment of the show and of the late night show. And she says, before we say goodbye, there's something I want to say. Tonight has been the honor of my life. And she actually gets a little emotional. She says it's always been a dream of mine, and she starts to tear up. She's like, "Oh, I'm such a big crybaby." And then beautifully, the camera cuts to, not the camera. The next scene is a quick cut to current Deborah reeling in the fish. She's like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa," with the audio of the late night show in the background. She's like, "I'm just so proud to host the show, and I'm even more proud to share it with my family." And I'm even more proud, and to share with my family. Frank, my husband, excuse me, perfect with a disgusting burp. Excellent work. Okay, so I'm even more proud to share it with my family. Frank, my husband, and then if you pause it on that, it's Frank the husband with Kathy next to Frank, and she's actually holding DJ in her arms. So it looks like they're a family. So if that's not foreshadowing of what's to come, and Frank, my husband, I love you. And she gives him a kiss, and Kathy, my sister and my best friend. So that's how they show you what their actual relationship was. They used to be best friends before this all happened. And she's like, she says to DJ, and to that little munchkin who's in your arms. And then the piano hits the doom doom doom, like that emotional stuff. And then you see Deborah's like talking to the fish. Okay, hang on. All right. She's going to release the fish, and she feels the fish's pain. Like you just see, she's just has this super tough exterior, but deep down, she's a good person that's had to put up this front for so many years. Like she said in the pilot to Marty, thanks to assholes like you, she's had to give it her all every second of every day. So then it goes back to the show and to the late night, and she's like, all right, come here, DJ. And then she's like, say, see you tomorrow night. And DJ goes, see you tomorrow night. And she waves. And of course, Ava starts crying. And then you see Deborah, like, because she knows what Ava's about to see, and she's about to learn everything about her and the history of it. And that's when it does the piano, and that's it. Directed by Lucia Aniello. Hope I said it right. What a show. I love it so much. Thank you.